All right. In this presentation, we're going to talk about good and bad foods and the 80/20 rule. Now, to start off, we need to get clear on three things. One, there is no such thing as a good or bad food for fat loss, only a good or bad overall diet. Two, knowing this, there is no food that's off limits for fat loss, but certain foods need to be consumed in moderation. And three, most importantly, your diet needs to be something that you enjoy and it has to be something that you can stick with for life. Now, while the amount of calories you eat on a daily basis will determine how much weight you lose, what those calories are made up of will determine how you feel. Technically, you could eat McDonald's every day, and as long as you eat within your calorie deficit, you would lose weight. But you would feel pretty damn awful, and it would be very hard for you to keep the calories low because these foods are what's called hyperpalatable. And that simply means they are delicious. And because they are delicious, they're extremely easy to overconsume, which is why we want to follow the 80/20 rule or your own version of it. And I'll explain what that means in a bit. Now, the 80/20 rule is when you get 80% of your calories from nutrient-dense foods, and then you want to get the other 20% of your calories, you want to get them from foods that are good for the soul, meaning they give you emotional satisfaction, whatever you want, essentially. Now, nutrient-dense foods are often lower in calories and higher in food volume. Here's a few examples. By prioritizing these foods, you'll get to eat way more and you're going to stay fuller for longer. And you're going to feel more energized on a daily basis because your body is getting the nutrition it needs in the form of vitamins and minerals. And some examples of nutrient-dense foods are fruits, veg, beans, legumes, lean meats, low-fat dairy products, seeds, nuts, and whole grains. And as I previously said, these are often lower in calories, not always, but most of the time, and they give you a very good level of satiety, meaning they keep you full. On the other hand, we have calorie-dense, hyperpalatable, highly processed foods, and they are the opposite. They are high in calories, they do not keep you full for very long, and they are, like I've said before, extremely delicious, and when you eat them, you just want more and more and more. It's like, they can be very addictive. These include fried foods, pastries, cakes, cookies, biscuits, chocolate, lollies, candies, crisps, oily foods, donuts, and there are so many other calorie-dense foods. And unfortunately, these foods often contain minimal to no nutrition, and they're unlikely to keep you full for very long. And this is why you ideally want to get only roughly 20% of your calorie intake from these foods. But they are not off limits, right? They should never be off limits. And we need to stop seeing foods as good and bad and start seeing them as more nutrient dense or less nutrient dense. Foods that align with your goals, foods that might not, and foods that need to be moderated and foods that don't, right? You can eat 1,000,000 cucumbers, but you need to be careful with how much chocolate you have. Not that anyone would be eating 1,000,000 cucumbers. By the way, the 80/20 rule is just a rule of thumb. So for you, if you're someone who really eats a lot of hyper palatable, calorie dense foods, maybe your diet consists of mainly these foods. In that case, we would maybe start you with a 50-50 split and eventually get you to 80-20. Or we might just find that you would like to have more of these calorie dense foods and you are okay with the fact that they don't give you as much energy. You're okay with the, I guess, the consequences of having them more frequently. And for you, you might be on, say, 60-40, a 60-40 split, which is back at the start of this presentation. I said maybe you would want to follow your own version. So, ideally, the 80-20 rule is what you would want to follow. But if you're someone who has spent their whole life eating mostly calorie dense foods, then maybe we will settle at the 60-40 rule. There's no right or wrong, but it's just a good guide. Now, the key takeaways from this presentation: there are no good or bad foods, right? Just a good or bad overall diet. Calorie dense foods can always have a place in your diet. They just need to be moderated. And following the 80-20 rule is a good rule of thumb because it allows you to have these yummy calorie dense foods, but also makes sure that you're probably going to hit your nutritional needs. And to conclude, your diet needs to be something you can see yourself doing for life, right? Now, obviously, to lose weight, you need to cut calories, and you're not going to be on low calories for the rest of your life. Once you've lost the weight, then calories can go to maintenance. So that's not what I'm talking about. But the foods that your diet consists of, they need to be stuff. If you want, to maintain the weight, once you lose it, you want these foods that you're going to start eating, if you're not already eating them, to be stuff that you enjoy and things that you're going to be able to eat forever, ideally. Now, as we go through the coaching process, I want you to regularly remind yourself of that, right? And in future presentations, we're going to talk about strategies on how you can implement these calorie-dense foods in moderation without going overboard. And there's many of them, which is why I'm not going to go through them now. And that will in turn make it easier to stick with the 80-20 rule. Now, as always, if you have any questions, just let me know. I'm one message away. And thanks for listening. Until the next one.